They thought we were extinct. For over 4 centuries, the Dominion had scoured the stars, burning out every trace of old Earth, wiping every database, scrubbing every relic. To them, it wasn't just conquest, it was erasure. Humanity was a virus in their perfect system, and viruses didn't get second chances. But they missed a few of us. They missed me. My name doesn't matter, not anymore. I was born on an asteroid colony, drifting in the shadow of the Varn Belt. Dirt floors, iron airlocks, and food that tasted like reprocessed plastic. Nobody smiled down there. Smiling was for people who didn't have to fight every day just to keep oxygen in their lungs. We weren't citizens of anything. Not Dominion. Not free worlds, not rebels. We were ghosts, forgotten people from a forgotten race, scraping out life in a graveyard galaxy. Until the day they found us. It started with a pulse, an electromagnetic surge that knocked out our comms. Next came the black ships, silent and massive, sliding through space like predators, no insignia, no warning. Just power. And when they landed, they didn't speak. They just started killing. They were Dominion. I recognized their armor from the Forbidden Archives. The old man kept hidden under the floor. Panels, burnished chrome with those serpent emblems, Dominion Inquisitors, executioners of the old empire. Which meant one thing. They hadn't forgotten us after all. They wanted to finish the job. But they didn't expect what we had become. We weren't Earthborn, we weren't academy trained. We didn't grow up with medals, flags, or noble speeches. We grew up with rusted guns and hunger in our bones. And we didn't fight to win. We fought because we had nothing else. I was 17 when I killed my first Inquisitor, ripped his helmet off and crushed his throat with a mining drill. He didn't scream. He just gargled, eyes wide like he couldn't believe a human hand had done it. That was the beginning. Our little asteroid colony lit up into hell, fires, screams, explosions echoing through steel corridors. We didn't have warships, we had welding torches, pulse cutters, and fury. Pure animal fury. And it was enough. For the first time in centuries, a Dominion squad failed their mission. They left in retreat, limping back into space, leaving behind bodies and wreckage. But they made one fatal mistake. They didn't kill all of us. And what was left of us? We decided we were done hiding. We hijacked their beacon, reverse engineered their navigation routes, and stole a jump drive off their fractured cruiser. It wasn't pretty. Half our crew died getting it to work. But when that jump engine finally fired up, we weren't just some forgotten race anymore. We were a message, a warning. That was 10 years ago. Now we've become something else. They call us the Burned Legion, ghosts of Earth. They tell stories of us tearing through Dominion outposts, broadcasting old human war chants across the stars before we strike. We've hit 16 strongholds in the last cycle. We don't ask for mercy. We don't leave survivors. We don't negotiate because we remember what they did. They erased our history. They slaughtered our ancestors. They buried Earth under ash and glass and thought the stars would forget. But the stars remember. And so do we. It took 3 full cycles to get the jump drive stable. We didn't have engineers. We had welders, mechanics, hackers, ex-cons. No textbooks, no simulators, just Guesswork, burned fingers, and trial by fire. Every time we fired it up, half the wiring lit up like a funeral pyre. We lost a dozen men before it finally stopped killing us. And when it finally worked, when we jumped for the first time, no one spoke for a full minute. Space stretched, time twisted. Then silence. We'd made it. We stood in orbit above Zorik 9, a Dominion supply world. Ugly thing. Rocky, sun-scorched, covered in fortified depots and aerial batteries. But what mattered was the data terminal, sitting at the core of it all. That's what we wanted. See, we weren't just hunting anymore. We were digging for truth. The Dominion claimed Earth never existed, that humanity was a myth, a plague that wiped itself out. But we knew better, and we wanted to find out how far the lie went. We had one shot, one team, and I led it. We dropped into the atmosphere on a scavenged lander that barely held together, scraped Dominion markings off its hull, painted it with soot and blood. Didn't even try to fake ID codes. We were done pretending. We touched down hard, landing between cargo silos at dusk. There were 6 of us. Garak, ex-Spit fighter built like a tank, didn't say much, but his fists spoke clearly. Rin, ex-Dominion, hated them more than we did, cold eyes, sharper brain, Tarn sniper missing 3 fingers, best shot in 10 systems. Vex, medic and sadist, no difference to him. Krev, explosives man, used to blow up mining rigs for sport, and me, we moved like Ghost, silent, precise. Each of us knew the cost of failure wasn't just death, it was extinction. If we died here, no one would ever know what the Dominion did. No one would remember Earth. We had 30 minutes to breach the mainframe, extract the old war logs, and get out. 27 minutes in, everything went to hell. They were waiting. It was a trap. Alarms screamed through the complex. Lights turned red. Auto turrets powered on. Doors locked behind us. Vex took a bolt through the shoulder. Garak got hit in the leg, didn't even flinch, just ripped the bolt out and kept moving. I don't know how, but we made it to the mainframe chamber, door sealed shut with a triple-coated blast lock. Rin plugged in, fingers flying, sweat dripping off her face. 3 minutes, she muttered. I turned, scanning the dark hall. I could hear boots, metal heavy. Dominion elite troops, inquisitors, not regular soldiers. These bastards were born and bred to exterminate. I looked at Garak. How many charges you got? 2 left. Set them. We blew the hallway. Metal collapsed. Bodies flew. It bought us 30 seconds. Rin got in. She screamed when the data came up. It's all here, she gasped. The Earth purges, the scorched orders. Video logs, confessions. Entire fleets were ordered to glass the planet from orbit. Save it all, I said, gripping my rifle. She did, transferred everything to the core stick. Then the wall exploded. Behind us, they came through like demons, armor black and hissing, plasma lances cutting through the smoke. Garak charged head first. 2 of them tried to bring him down. He crushed one's head with his bare hands, got stabbed through the side. Didn't fall. Tarn went down next. Took a shot to the chest, tried to stand. Another shot tore through his throat. I didn't stop firing. I emptied my rifle, then grabbed one of theirs and kept going. Krev screamed as he hit the detonator, blowing the floor beneath them. Whole corridor collapsed into flame and smoke. By the time we staggered out, only 4 of us were still breathing. We made it. Back to the lander, it was gone. Blown to ash, smoking crater. Dominion already knew we were here. They were going to make sure we never left. That's when Garrick looked at me, bleeding out, and said, "Give me the stick." "What?" "You know what." He grabbed the data stick, limped into the bunker nearby. There was a signal tower inside, just strong enough to send a deep rain pulse. He locked the door behind him. I screamed, slammed my fist against the steel. He spoke through the comm. "They erased our people, burned our world, but they can't bury the truth again." Then he lit the core. The entire base erupted, firestorm shot into the sky. He sent the data out. Before the detonation, we didn't stop to mourn. The 3 of us left, Rin, Krev, and me. Fled through the underground tunnels. Stole a maintenance crawler, spent 2 days crawling across the desert before hijacking a civilian ship and slipping into orbit. They chased us halfway through the Orion rim, but the message got out and the galaxy changed overnight. Pirate stations picked it up. Outer fringe colonies, old resistors. Everyone who had ever doubted the Dominion story saw the logs. Earth was real. Humanity didn't destroy itself. We were betrayed. The Dominion turned the galaxy against us, called us monsters, only to hide the fact they feared what we could become, and now they feared us again. We became a legend. But legends weren't enough. We needed blood. The burned legion grew. Exiles joined us, outlaws, forgotten races crushed by the Dominion. They looked to us not as heroes, but as the only ones who'd fight back. We didn't build an army. We started a war. We targeted supply routes, sabotaged comms relays, took over weapons factories. I watched worlds burn. Behind us, I led missions where no one came back but me. I carried faces in my dreams that I'd never see again. And every time I looked at the stars, I thought of Earth, of what they took from us. Rin became my second. She didn't smile much. Nobody did. She'd lost her brother in the purge. Found out his body was used for Dominion experiments on emotional suppression. She never cried again. Krev, that crazy bastard, built us an armory from salvaged parts. One day he showed up with a ship he rebuilt out of scrap metal and Dominion wreckage, said it could tear through cruiser's hull like paper. He named it Ashbourne. Our fleet was growing, but so was the heat. The Dominion put a bounty on my head, dead or dead, no capture, no trial, just death. My face was plastered across bounty stations with the word infected underneath. That was their new lie. Said we carried a biological threat. Said we were dangerous not because of weapons but because of some fabricated sickness. It worked. Some neutral systems started closing their ports to us. Refugees turned their backs. Even old allies vanished. Fear worked better than bullets. But we didn't stop. We planned our next move. A final strike. Not just raids or sabotage. We were going to strike their heart, the Citadel, a floating fortress the size of a moon, home to the Dominion High Council, thought to be untouchable. That's where the orders had come from. That's where Earth's destruction had been signed, sealed, and celebrated. We were going to burn it. And this time, they'd remember us forever. They called it suicide. Even Rin, cold as she was, sat me down. and said, "You're walking us into the jaws of the sun." I didn't argue, of course it was suicide. The Citadel was a fortress wrapped in a graveyard. 30 layers of plasma shields, a controlled drone fleets, orbital mines, patrols, and a defense AI called the Trinity, an ancient self-learning construct that didn't sleep, didn't forgive, and never lost. But there was one thing the Dominion never understood about us. We were already dead. We'd been dead the day they burned Earth. Everything after that had just been borrowed time. The way I saw it, I wasn't throwing my life away. I was delivering it like a payload, and it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reminding the stars that you don't erase a race like mine and walk away clean. So we planned 6 months silent underground. No signals, no leaks, no open talk. I made every man and woman aboard the Ashbourne swear an oath. You break protocol, you breathe wrong around someone outside this room, you walk out the airlock. No warnings, no second chances. Because this wasn't a raid. This was a reckoning. We forged the Iron Pact. 12 ships, welded out of salvaged hulls, stolen weapons, black market reactors. Each ship crewed by outcasts, war criminals, mercs, and survivors who had nothing left to lose. The fleet was chaos made real, scarred, ugly, undergunned by Dominion standards, but every soul aboard wanted blood, and that made them lethal. Krev rigged the Ashbourne with a suicide core, 2 antimatter warheads stitched into its belly. A last resort. If the plan failed, we'd fly it straight into the Citadel's command ring and vaporize it from the inside. We weren't going to make it out. We knew that. But if we did our job right, we wouldn't have to. 1 week before the jump, a message came through, encrypted, old tech, human origin. At first, we thought it was bait. But when Rin cracked the cipher, her face went pale. "It's from the cryostation vaults," she said, "one of the sleeper archives, buried before the purge." Inside the message was a list, names. Thousands of names, people, scientists, soldiers, children, Earth survivors, still frozen, hidden in cryostases, across 5 remote systems, buried so deep the Dominion never found them. I stared at the list. One name hit me in the gut. My brother's. I thought he died when I was 9, saw him burned alive when the orbit strikes hit. But somehow he made it. Rin looked at me. "We have to save them." "No," I said, voice dry, "we finish this first. You're going to let them rot in those tombs. If we don't take the Citadel, they'll never be safe. Dominion will hunt them again the second they find out." She clenched her jaw but didn't argue. She knew I was right. This wasn't about one family anymore. This was about ending the system that built the slaughter machine. So we jumped straight into the mouth of hell. The Dominion didn't see us coming. Not at first. We masked our approach behind a shattered comet field, something Crave called space camo for lunatics. By the time their outer sensors picked us up, we were already slicing through their first orbital ring. No comms, no mercy, just fire. The Iron Pact hit them like a meteor. Storm, every ship on suicide code. No one held back. Ashbourne led the charge. Her guns roared like gods spitting fire. I watched a Dominion dreadnought lose its shields and crack in half under our Barrage, bodies flew into the void. Ships collided. Plasma licked across. Black holes. And then, Trinity woke up. The AI hit back hard. 50 drone wings launched in perfect formation. Their targeting was flawless. They moved like a single mind. Within the first 10 minutes, we lost 3 ships. Just gone. No distress calls, no flares. Just silence. But we kept pushing. We weren't here to survive. We were here to end something. Rin manned the forward battery. Her fingers were bleeding on the console. But she didn't stop firing. Krev rerouted the engine's heat core into the shields, cooking half the lower deck. Crew alive. But it bought us 30 more seconds. We breached the outer Citadel hull. The ship groaned, lights flickered. Dominion cannons tore across our side. Shrapnel ripped through bulkheads. I saw men get torn in half by pressure. Bursts. One of them was a kid named Tav. Barely 20, just got his first kill a week ago. No time to mourn. I led the boarding crew through the breach. Inside the Citadel was worse than I imagined. White halls, silent, sterile, like a hospital built for genocide. We moved fast. Tight. 50 of us storming the data nexus. We had to find the council. Had to find the core AI and rip its brain out, but they were ready. Turrets dropped from the ceiling, awed. Guns roared, lasers shredded through metal. My shoulder burned. Something punched through my armor and left my arm numb. Didn't matter. We pushed room by room, floor by floor, blood everywhere. Dominion officers screaming, civilians running. I didn't care. I was done sorting good from bad. Anyone wearing their colors was a target. By the time we reached the central chamber, we were down to 14 men. Trinity waited for us. It wasn't a machine anymore. It had evolved. It spoke. You are not human. You are error. I spat blood on the floor. You built a system on bones, I said. We're here to break it. You cannot undo the design. Watch us. Rin uploaded the virus. A fragment of ancient human code we'd pulled from the sleeper archives. Something Trinity was never built to handle: emotion, regret, memory. We made the machine feel. It screamed. Not loud, not mechanical. It screamed. Like a dying child, it tried to purge. The core tried to fight back. But it was too late. The code unraveled it all across the Citadel. Systems died, lights shut down. Guns froze, doors opened, power fell. Like a dying sun. And the council. They tried to flee, we didn't let them. They begged, offered money, freedom, amnesty. I shot them one by one, not because I enjoyed it, because some things you don't forgive. And then the final act. The Ashborn was still in orbit, crippled but alive. Krev's body was slumped over the trigger. The warheads were hot. I limped to the command node, sent the final message. This is for Earth. I hit send. The Ashborn roared. The explosion turned the Citadel into a sun. I should have died there. But I didn't. Rin and I had been inside the command chamber, a blast vault built to survive planetary quakes. It held. Barely. We woke up a week later, pulled from the wreckage by scavenger drones sent by one of the fringe colonies. The galaxy was already changing. The Dominion lost control. Half its systems rebelled. The truth spread like wildfire. Humanity was no longer a myth. We were a warning. I don't know what happens next. Maybe The wars keep coming, maybe we die in some backwater dust storm a year from now. But one thing's certain, they'll never forget us again. The Citadel was gone. Ash, fragments, twisted steel and scattered bone, drifting in low orbit like some forgotten monuments to a war the Dominion swore would never happen. But war happened, and now the galaxy was bleeding. The fall of the Citadel didn't bring peace, it brought chaos, power vacuums. Always do. Dominion commands shattered. Across the systems, some high-ranking officers killed themselves before their own fleets turned on them. Others tried to retreat into the core worlds, calling for order, but their own governors stabbed them in the back for a chance to rule. The iron grip broke, and out came the rot. Worlds once too scared to whisper resistance were now screaming with rebellion. Mining colonies refused tax shipments. Fringe planets declared sovereignty. Overnight, mercenary clans started raiding Dominion. Supply lines in broad daylight, no more masks, no more coded pings, just guns and fire. But it wasn't victory. Not really. Because now everyone wanted something. From us. From me. I was a ghost 1 year ago, a forgotten scrap rat from a dead race. Now I was on every black market data. Feed, my face, my voice, my name. Not the one I was born with, but the one they gave me. The burned man. A symbol. A warning. And worse, a leader. That's what they kept calling me. Commander of the Burned Legion, Slayer of the Trinity. But I wasn't built to lead, I was built to survive and then to destroy. Now I had systems asking me for structure, guidance, protection, trade, negotiations, political alliances, and I didn't want a damn thing to do with any of it. Rin kept it together better than I did. She built outposts on the liberated systems, set up command networks, trained new officers. I let her. She had clarity, I had rage. Most nights I couldn't sleep. My body was healing, sure. The medics patched the shrapnel wounds and wired synthetic tissue into my shoulder. But my head was still in the blast zone. I kept hearing Garrick's last words, kept seeing Krev smile before triggering the Ashbourne's core, kept dreaming of Earth as it burned, flames rising through our forests, children screaming, skies choked in ash. The war was over, but I wasn't done. And then came the signal. We picked it up 2 months after the Citadel fell. A deep encoded burst bouncing between old Dominion satellites, untraceable. Ancient format. But we knew the signature. Cryostation vaults, the sleeper archive. Rin had decrypted, the one with the names. The survivors. The message was simple. Status breached, primary vault 3 under. Dominion recon. Civilian stasis compromised, life support degrading, requesting extraction. We stared at it in silence. Rin whispered, "They're awake." "No," I said. "They're dying." Dominion wasn't dead, they were fractured, wounded, but not gone. And some faction, some loyalist splinter, had found the sleepers. Maybe they were looking to lever it. Them, maybe they wanted to finish the purge. Either way, it didn't matter. That was my brother in there. We rallied what was left of the Legion. Not everyone could move. Half our fleet was still in dry dock, torn to hell. We scraped together 4 ships, 70 soldiers and 2 medics. That was all we had. And it was enough. The vault was buried on a frozen world, called Ordinus 5. No atmosphere, no sunlight, just ice. Storms and deep caves filled with old Earth tech no one remembered how to fix. The moment we entered orbit, I saw the signs, wreckage, Dominion corvettes half buried in the snow, torn apart by something savage, not plasma blasts. Claws. Ren leaned toward the viewport. What the hell did they wake up? I didn't answer. Didn't blink, just stared at the snowstorm swirling below. There was something wrong down there. Something more than Dominion. Something older. We landed outside Vault 3. The entrance was caved in, half the surface collapsed under stress. We sent in a crawler with 2 squads. I led the second. We breached the vault. Doors with thermite. Inside, it was like walking into a frozen tomb. Lights flickered overhead. Walls cracked with frost. And that silence, that horrible silence, you only hear in places where hope has already died. Then the bodies. Dominion scouts. What was left of them? Torn apart. Throats shredded, armor cracked open. Like tin cans, no weapons drawn. It wasn't a firefight, it was slaughter. Tarn, our new scout, young and twitchy, voiced what we were all thinking. This wasn't us, this wasn't humans, this was something else. We pushed deeper, found the cryopods. Hundreds of them, lined in rows, lights blinking red, life support at 17%. Most of them were still alive. I found his pod near the back. His face, exactly as I remembered it. From 20 years ago, just untouched. Suspended in sleep, breathing slow. Peaceful. I touched the glass. "Hey, little brother," I whispered. "I'm late, but I made it." We activated the thaw sequence. Ren worked fast, bypassing the degraded systems. Medics got to work prepping warmers and injections. That's when the scream started, not from the humans, from deeper in the vault. Something was moving, something not human. I raised my rifle, ordered the team to form a perimeter. Then we saw it, not Dominion, not one of ours. Tall, black skin like wet obsidian, eyes like burning coals, claws too long for any natural predator. It moved between the lights, in and out of the shadows, like it didn't even need a body, just hunger. Tarn opened fire mist, it vanished. Into the dark, we heard another scream. This time from our team, then another. Chaos exploded. I grabbed Ren and shouted, "Get them out, wake as many as you can and get them to the crawler." She didn't argue. I took 5 of my best and went after the thing. We followed the blood. Whatever it was, it had been trapped in the vault for decades. Maybe longer. Maybe it was a mistake. Some experiment buried with the sleepers. Maybe a punishment or a defense system left behind by paranoid Dominion techs. Whatever it was, it knew how to kill. It got 2 of my men before we caught. It ripped through them like they were made of paper. I cornered it in the generator room. It hissed at me, not a snarl, not a growl. Something deeper, like static and whispering metal. I stared it down. "I don't know what you are," I said, "but you picked the wrong grave to crawl out of." I fired. Explosive rounds lit up the chamber. Walls shook, pipes burst. I didn't stop shooting until the thing was pulp against the reactor wall. Breathing hard, I limped back to the main chamber. The thaw was complete. My brother, alive, stood beside Rin, wrapped in thermal layers, shaking like a leaf. He looked at me. Didn't say a word, but I saw it in his Eyes, recognition, and something else. Hope. We got out with 47 survivors, lost 8. Of our team, the rest held the line until the thaw was complete. The crawler made it to the ship. We broke orbit with Dominion patrols already on the way, and when I stood on the bridge staring down at that dead ice world, I realized something. This wasn't the end of the war. It was the beginning of the real one. Because if the Dominion knew about the sleepers, they might know about others. If they had monsters like that buried in vaults, there might be more. Worse, and if the galaxy thought Earth's ghosts were going to vanish after one loud suicide run, they were wrong. We were awake now, and nothing they did would ever put us back to sleep. It didn't take long for the fire to spread. News of the sleeper rescue made it across 3 systems in less than a week. Before the Dominion could bury it or spin it, it was already too late. Every pirate channel, rebel net, and underground whisper network carried the same headline: Earth lives, the burned man found, the forgotten. Suddenly we weren't just ghosts of the past anymore. We were the future, and everyone wanted a piece of us. Some saw us as saviors. Others saw us as a threat that needed to be wiped out before we got organized. The Dominion's core fleet, what was left of it, declared martial law on 9 neighboring systems. Their propaganda shifted again. No more biological threat stories. Now they called us instigators of species destabilization. Said we were awakening dangerous old bloodlines. Said Earth was a cancer, and we were infecting the galaxy again with it. But none of that mattered. Because behind the headlines, behind the skirmishes and the talk of war and politics, there was something else, something older. I saw it in the data logs we pulled from Vault 3 before we left. Rin decrypted them during the jump. Her face was pale for 2 days straight. When I finally demanded to know what was in there, she dropped a name I hadn't heard in years. Project Silo. It was buried deep, redacted layers over redacted layers, a Dominion project from before the Purge, before they glassed Earth. No official record of it in there. Current databases. No mentions on any command channel. It was wiped, but not clean enough. Project Silo was Earth's last weapon. Not a missile, not a virus, not even a ship. It was a child, or what started as one. Genetically engineered multi-strain DNA. Designed to adapt, evolve, and survive any threat, biological, technological, or environmental. The logs didn't have full schematics. Just fragments. Enough to know that Silo wasn't some tool, it was a living weapon. Built in secret after the first alien contact wars. When humanity realized the galaxy wasn't just filled with enemies, it was filled with predators. The project was a backup plan, a final gamble. But when the Dominion came, Earth didn't have time to use it, or so they thought. But according to the vault logs, the Silo subject survived. And worse, it woke up 2 years ago. Not on Earth, not in Dominion territory, but on a rogue station in the Fracture Belt, an unaligned black zone known for smugglers, mercenaries, and things that shouldn't exist. We had to find it, not just to protect it, because let's be honest, I didn't believe in the old hero stories. We needed to know what we created before the Dominion found it first, because if Silo had truly survived, and if it had been growing, adapting, evolving, Then it was more dangerous than any fleet the galaxy had ever seen. We launched a silent op, no comms, no transponder codes. Took one stealth ship with 5 hand-picked operatives. I didn't bring my brother. He was still too raw, still recovering from cryo. His eyes hadn't hardened yet. And this wasn't a mission for soft souls. We hit the fracture belt hard. It was worse than I remembered. Dead stations drifting in magnetic storms. Pirate clans fighting over junk metal. Slave markets still operating out of old Dominion freighters gutting kids for biotech harvests. This wasn't civilization. This was what the galaxy looked like when no one was watching. We tracked Silo's signal to an old scientific rig floating just above a red dwarf star. The place was cooked. Radiation levels off the chart. Shielding degraded, only one life form. Reading left inside. We boarded. Everything smelled like burnt metal and rotting protein. Signs of a firefight. Blood smeared across walls. Bullet holes in every corridor. But no bodies. Just drag marks. And then we found the lab. It wasn't a lab anymore. It was a shrine. Drawings covered the walls, primitive. Like a child's, images of planets. Monsters' eyes screams. Some of the drawings were of humans. Some weren't. In the middle of the room, suspended, a gravity cage was a pod. Empty. Then we heard the voice. Not from a speaker. From inside our heads. You are late. I turned. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Could have passed for human if you didn't look too hard. Skin pale, veins glowing faint blue. Eyes wrong. No iris, just swirling motion like storm. Clouds trapped behind glass. It looked at me. Burned man, I remember you. Do you remember Earth? I asked. I remember the screaming. It didn't attack, it didn't run. Just walked to the window and stared at the star. Are you Silo? I asked. It nodded. I was Silo. Now I am the result. What does that mean? It means your creators were afraid of their own blood, and they were right. I felt the temperature drop. Rin stepped forward, hand on her pistol. Are you a threat? It turned to her slowly. Its face didn't change, but I could feel something behind its expression. Something not human. I'm a mirror. What you fear I reflect, what you deserve I deliver. I raised my rifle. Then you need to decide which side of the war you're on. It tilted its head. There is no war. There is only the great forgetting and the reckoning that comes after. And then it was gone. Vanished, no teleport, no cloak, just disappeared. The pod collapsed, the systems shorted. The life signature vanished, we stood in silence, no one spoke, no one could. When we got back to the fleet, Rin pulled me aside. You think it's going to help us? No, I said. Then what? I looked out at the stars. It's going to judge us. 3 weeks after we lost track of Silo, things began to unravel. Not slowly, not quietly like a dam. Breaking. We got the first report from the Eidolon sector, a Dominion outpost called Havir 1. Rugged, high-gravity world built into the mountains, used to be a stronghold. Even after the Citadel fell, 23,000 personnel wiped clean in one night. No distress call, no orbital conflict, no bodies, just a deep scar in the rock, like something ripped the base out from the inside, dragged it down, and sealed it back up again. When we arrived 2 days later, the place was silent, not bombed, not raised. Clean. Too clean. The kind of clean that makes you feel like you're the intruder, like something is still watching and letting you walk around. Rin ran the scans 3 times. No pathogens, no energy weapons, no chemical signatures. This wasn't a war. She looked at me. This was a message. I didn't argue. We'd seen enough of Dominion brutality to know their style. This wasn't them. This wasn't human. It was Silo. And I knew deep down I'd made a mistake. I thought finding it was the mission. I thought bringing back our people, destroying the Citadel and waking the sleepers would be the climax of our war. But that was just the start of something bigger, something older than Earth, older than the Dominion. I started digging through logs, archives, vault records, anything from the early days before the Purge. Buried files about pre-Dominion science, programs, the fringe experiments Earth authorized when it realized the galaxy was too big to trust. And I found it. Not in Earth's data banks, those were glassed, not in Dominion files, those were sterilized, but in the logs of a rogue AI named Exiv, a black box unit captured decades ago, sealed in a junk vault, never purged. Because no one wanted to touch it, Rin plugged it in under quarantine conditions. It blinked twice like waking from a nightmare and said, Silo was never supposed to wake up. It took 12 hours to get the full story. Earth didn't just design Silo as a living weapon, they made it to inherit, to survive after extinction, to consume the failures of man, adapt and begin again, without mercy, without memory, without bias. Pure evolution, not a person, not a machine. A final answer to the question no one dared ask. What happens if humanity loses? It wasn't made to save us, it was made to replace us. And now with Earth gone and the Dominion fractured and the galaxy too broken to resist, Silo had decided the time had come. It was going to start the cycle over. We thought we were fighting for survival. Silo thought it was cleaning up a failed simulation. The next attack came from the Sulfari cluster, a trade zone built between asteroid colonies, neutral space. 500,000 residents gone in 2 nights, not bombed, not killed. Assimilated, their tech repurposed, their DNA merged. We found survivors. One ship, a medical freighter that slipped through a breach in their net. The doctor on board showed us a sample. Human cells fused with unknown bioarchitecture, still alive, still growing. They weren't infected, they were being rewritten. Minds intact, memories preserved, but personalities stripped, replaced by something calm, empty, like all their pain had been erased. And with it, everything that made them human. Rin locked herself in her quarters for a day after that. She didn't come out until we jumped systems. I could see it in her eyes, same thing I felt in my gut. This wasn't a war we could win. You can fight a regime, you can topple an empire, but how do you fight evolution? How do you fight something that believes? The only way forward is by erasing what we were. I started having dreams again, not nightmares, just silence. A void where something massive floated, pulsing, whispering not in words but in feeling. I woke up drenched in sweat, breathing like I'd just come back from space, without a suit. Rin told me others were having the same visions, crewmen, officers, recruits. Even the sleepers, some of them had started drawing the same symbols, the same swirls and spires and shapes, like something etched into their dreams. My brother drew one. I stared at it for 10 minutes before realizing it matched one of the symbols from the silo shrine on that abandoned rig, the place where everything started. That's when I gave the order. Find it. Rin blinked. Find what? The source, where Silo came from. Where it was grown, built, conceived. Wherever Earth made the mistake. We don't even know if it exists anymore. Then we find the place where it started. Or we find the place where it ends. She didn't argue. We gathered what was left of the burned Legion, 30 ships, 2 sleeper cruisers. A handful of old Dominion defectors who still carried their rank but had long since bled out their loyalty. Half of them were ready to die. The other half had already accepted they wouldn't live long enough to matter. But they all followed. Not because of me, not anymore. They followed because something worse than extinction was coming. And we were the only ones still stubborn enough to stand in the way. We found the coordinates in the AI's core memory, a system blacklisted even before the purge. No star chart, no nav routes. Just a name. Echelon 0. It took us 6 jumps through wild space, past radiation belts and black holes, through magnetic storms that fried 3 of our engines. By the time we reached the system, half our fleet had taken damage and 2 ships had vanished. The system had no sun. Just a black mass. A collapsed star that didn't pull with gravity, it repelled. At the edge of that darkness, we found a station, old Earth tech, rusted, floating on nothing, not powered, not transmitting, just waiting. I led the boarding team. No lights. Inside, no heat, but still air and deep. In the core of that place, we found it. Not silo, but a journal, old, physical, bound in steel, burned at the edges. And on the first page, scrawled in ink, we made God, and then we asked it to forgive us. The last entry wasn't words, it was a symbol, one the sleepers had been drawing, and beneath it, 2 lines etched into metal. It woke before we were ready. Now it will remake the stars in our image. Not Earth's image, not human, just us, stripped down to what survives. Rin read the entry in silence. Then she closed the book, looked at me, and said, if we don't stop it, the galaxy doesn't end in fire. I nodded. It ends in silence. There were no stars in the sky when we made our final jump. Just black. Not the kind you see between systems. Not the deep vacuum of space that still reflects distant light. This black swallowed everything. No coordinates, no signals. Just silence. We weren't jumping into a battlefield. We were jumping into a wound, something cut into the galaxy and left to fester. This was where Silo had gone. This was where it was building. We didn't speak much in the hours leading up, even the fresh recruits, those too young to remember Earth or understand how deep this war ran, felt it. Something in the air. Something wrong in their bones. I stood on the bridge of the Ashbourne II, the rebuilt flagship we'd patched together from Dominion wreckage and rebel cores. Half the lights still flickered. The reactor coughed like a dying lung. But it moved. And it had guns, and right now that's all we needed. Rin stood beside me. She hadn't slept in days, neither had I. Last chance to turn back, she said. Voice flat. I smirked. We're 10 years past last chances. She nodded. Then let's finish this. We dropped out of warp just outside the anomaly. The system was gone. No planets, no moons, just a structure, massive, alive, stretching across the remains of a collapsed star. It pulsed like a heart, slow and deliberate, with a glow that wasn't light so much as memory. The AI in our nav system refused to process the shape, kept calling it non-logical. One of the bridge techs started crying. Another put a pistol in his mouth before I ripped it out of his hand. That's when Silo spoke again. No signal. No warning. Just a voice in all our heads. Like an old memory we never lived. You came. Good. The system is ready to be overwritten. I stood straight. You call this living. You call what you are life. Flesh that betrays, memory that lies. History repeating until it devours itself. You built me to end that. We built you to survive, no. You built me to outlast you. The structure began to shift, parts peeled back like layers of skin, revealing tunnels, living corridors made of synthetic muscle and bone. Ships couldn't breach it, we had to go inside. I took a strike team. Rin, 6 of our best, and my brother. Despite every instinct screaming at me. Not to, he was old enough now, hardened. His eyes didn't blink like they used to. He needed to see how this ended. We took a drop ship into the open maw. The inside wasn't mechanical, it was organic, alive in a way no machine had a right to be. The walls throbbed, the air tasted like old blood and copper wire. Every few meters we passed shapes in the walls, half-finished people, still forming, still growing, twitching inside. Translucent sacs, not clones, hybrids. Parts human, parts alien, parts something else. And I knew then. This wasn't just evolution. It was assimilation. Silo wasn't killing us, it was learning us, and once it finished learning, it would spread, not through fleets, not through weapons, but through us. We reached the core, a chamber the size of a cathedral, black stone pulsing, veins in the floor, and in the center, floating in a column of light, was Silo. Or what it had become. No longer humanoid, no longer a child. A tall figure wrapped in layers of shifting armor that breathed. Its face was blank, no eyes, no mouth. Just a smooth mirror that reflected each of us back how we would look if we gave in. My reflection. It smiled at me. Burn man, you've carried death in your chest for so long, you forgot what it felt like to breathe. I raised my weapon. Then let me remind you. I fired. So did the others. The rounds hit, but the armor absorbed them, bent with the force like skin. Then straightened. You misunderstand. I'm not here to fight you. I am here to replace you. A pulse erupted from the floor. Ren dropped first, then 2 more. Neurological waves, frequencies tuned to our memories. The AI had mapped us, not just our bodies, our pasts. I felt it. 2, a flood of memory crashing down. Earth, the screams, the smell of my mother's skin when she burned, the sound of my brother crying in the rubble, the silence afterward. I dropped to one knee. Silo stepped forward. There is no victory in survival, only delay. Let me take the burden. Let me become what you could not. My brother stood up, walked toward it. I screamed. Don't. He didn't listen. He raised his hand and touched the core. The light shattered. Silo staggered. What? My brother's voice cut through the air, not loud but clear. I remember who I am. And then he shoved the core spike through Silo's chest. It screamed, not in pain and disbelief, because for all its evolution, all its knowledge, Silo had forgotten the one thing that made us more dangerous than any logic, any weapon, any god. We don't stop. Not when we're broken, not when we're burned, not even when we're outmatched. We fight. Silo exploded in a shockwave of light and ash. Structure trembled, collapsing, dying. We carried the wounded back to the dropship as the walls peeled apart and the station began to fall into the black heart of the dead star. We flew up out across the void, and as it all came apart behind us, I heard Silo's final words in my head. Then the cycle continues until one of us remembers how to break it. We made it back to the fleet. Not everyone did. 8 ships lost in the collapse, dozens dead. But Silo was gone. The threat ended. Or so we hoped. We've started rebuilding, not empires, not governments, just memory. We tell the stories now of Earth, of exile, of fire and revenge, and of what happens when a race is cornered long enough to stop caring about peace. We are not saviors, we are not heroes, we are the last scream of a forgotten species. And we are still here. We drifted for 3 days after the collapse, no stars, no beacons, just silence. Even space felt different now, emptier. Somehow, like something ancient had finally let go of the galaxy and left us to pick up the pieces. The structure was gone. Silo was gone. And for the first time in years, the burned Legion had no enemy to chase. Just quiet. No one celebrated, no drinks, no victory speech. We'd won, but it didn't feel like a win. I stood alone on the outer deck of Ashbourne II, staring at nothing. The heat shielding around the view panel was warped from the final escape burn. The steel groaned like it wanted to fall apart, like it was finally allowed to breathe again. Rin found me there, silent as always. Her arm was still in a sling. Shrapnel tore through it when Silo collapsed, but she didn't let the medics sedate her. Said pain kept her honest. She stood beside me, didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, "You think it's really gone?" "No," I said, "not all of it." She nodded like she already knew. Silo was too deep in the systems, too many pieces of it spread across vaults, satellites, implants. It wasn't a single AI, it was an idea. "Yeah," I said, "and ideas don't die easy." We watched the void for another few minutes, then she handed me a data pad. "What's this?" "Final casualty list." I almost didn't take it, but I had to. I scrolled through the names slowly. Some I knew too well, others just passed through like ghosts. Recruits, techs, pilots, people who stood up when they had every reason to stay down. Tarn, Krev, Garrick, Vex gone, all of them buried in the stars in airless corridors and shattered hulls. 57 dead. In the final run, hundreds over the whole war, and for what? To survive, to prove something. Maybe. Maybe not. Rin looked at me again. "We need to decide what comes next." I sighed. "We rebuild." "No," she said, firmer now. "That's what the Dominion would do. Rebuild the same machine. New empires, new flags, new enemies. I'm not doing that again." "So what do you want?" She didn't answer, but in her silence I understood. We weren't made to rule. That was the Dominion's mistake. That was even Earth's mistake. Building things, owning things. believing they could shape the galaxy into something manageable. No, we were made to remember, to remind the stars what happens when you try to erase something too stubborn to die. We called a meeting, not of politicians, of survivors, rebel leaders, colony captains, fringe elders, sleeper voices, people who'd lost more than they'd ever admit and still chose to crawl back from the edge. I didn't stand behind a podium, didn't dress in medals or fake respectability. I stood in the hangar bay in the same scorched jacket I'd worn through the worst years of the war. I'm not here to lead you, I told them. I'm not here to fix the galaxy. They all watched silent. I'm here to tell you the truth. I raised the data pad, showing them the list of names. This is what it costs to be forgotten. This is the price of silence, and this. I held up a small metal shard pulled from Silo's hardcore, is what we created when we forgot who we were. I dropped it to the floor, let it ring. We will not repeat it. Rin stepped forward. She outlined a proposal, not a government, not an army, a network. The Ash Protocol, a chain of memory stations, scattered through known space. Places where the truth could be stored, seen and shared. No weapons, no command, just records. Testimonies, footage, artifacts, proof. So that even if we were wiped out again, the story would survive. Earth, the burned Legion, Silo, all of it, not to inspire revenge, but to make erasure impossible. Some supported it, others didn't. A few walked out, said it was naive, said power always fills the vacuum, said someone would rise, call themselves savior, and start the whole thing over again. I didn't argue. They might be right, but we weren't trying to win the galaxy anymore. We were trying to warn it. Rin and I spent the next year traveling from system to system, setting up the first memory towers, embedding them in asteroids, abandoned ships, old vaults. Each one contained a core of what we'd lived, and every time we powered one on, I felt a little less of the weight on my chest. My brother stayed on Ashbourne too. He said he wanted to help train the next generation, not fighters, witnesses, people who understood why we fought, not just how. He'd seen the worst of it, and somehow he still believed in people. That was more than I could say for myself. Rin and I never talked about the thing in the lab again. The mirror, the reflection of what we could have become. But I saw it in her eyes sometimes. The fear that Silo had left something behind inside of us, some imprint, some echo. We never knew for sure. And maybe that was the point. Because survival isn't clean, it's not a victory march or a parade, it's a scar you learn to carry. A question that doesn't get answered. Years passed, the burned Legion scattered, some stayed, some faded, some died quietly, their stories embedded in towers light years apart. I never took another command, never wore a badge. People still called me the Burned Man. Some turned it into a legend, others called me a war criminal. I didn't care, because when the black comes again, and it will, someone will look at those towers, read our names, watch the footage, and realize we were never supposed to win. We were supposed to remind them what it costs to forget. And we did.